everybody watching Indie Film Cafe Spotlight. I'm your host, Jonathan Moody, and I've got my co-host here, Paul A. Presenza. How are you doing, Paul?
I am doing marvelous. How's it going, everybody?
All right, I am doing fantastic as well, and we got a fantastic guest here. She hasn't been on this show yet, so we're so excited to chat with her. But we've watched many of her movies on our show, on our Indie Film Cafe show. We love her. She always stands out. Please welcome Debbie Rochon. How are you doing, Debbie?
Thank you both. I'm doing great, and I'm extremely happy to be here to talk to you guys tonight.
Yay! Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys. Really,
yeah.
It's a pleasure.
You're very welcome. Now, Debbie, I don't know if you know much about our show. We do a show called Indie Film Cafe where we review movies and we rate them. Like we have like a stinkometer, so we rate them like 1 being really good and like 10 being stinky, and everything. But still, stinky is fun,
Yes, stinky can be really fun.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And that's our main flagship show, but we have a bunch of other shows too. And your films have popped up in a number of our different shows because you've been really, really prolific. I mean, I think you have something like 250 plus credits to your name, and it keeps growing. It looks like you've got a bunch of stuff lined up for this year too, which is great. So we'll get into that and we'll hopefully talk about some of the stuff coming up. But wow, I mean, go all the way back into the 80s. And it turns out, and I didn't even know this until just recently, you were in a movie I saw way back in high school, back in 1982. Ladies and gentlemen, The Fabulous Stains. Wow. It turns out that you had...
The Fabulous Stains.
Yeah, that you had been in there with Diane Lane and Laura Dern and members of the Sex Pistols and the Clash. I was in high school when I went and saw that. It was just amazing. Wow. How did you get into that?
Wow, where did you see it? Like literally what?
Oh, I saw that at the State Theater in Newark, Delaware. It would have been sometime in the early to mid 80s. It was like one of those
wow.
College,
okay, just
like
okay.
Those...
Are you guys getting big delays on your?
A little
bit, yeah. I don't know. I don't know. We're kind of going through a tornado watch.
Yeah.
So there might be like some issues with that stuff. I'm not sure.
Okay, so we'll just go right ahead and forgive me if I. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, can you tell us a little bit about
go
that?
Through the glitches, and I'll do my best to not talk over.
Okay.
So yes. So you have to go see, ladies and gentlemen, The Fabulous Stains, and I'll talk about that. So and okay, theater, that's extremely impressive because it was shot in 80, and when I work, actually the first time it was being shown was in the Film Forum Theater in New York City in 84, November 84. So it was one of the first things that I saw in the theater when I moved to New York. So I thought it was because that was super cool. But it was also playing on, I believe it was Flight, on a cable movie. And that's how most people saw it at that time. I think that was around ish or so. So I'm not entirely sure if you saw it like in the theater or on cable, but get involved with it. Well, a long story short, I had at the place of the manager of Craig Russell. He was a famous impersonator in the 70s, made a movie called Outrageous, and it was basically the Divine of Comedy, like back then, like for that short period. And so he lashed with his manager, who was a friend of mine, because I knew where to stay. And he had said, Paramount is doing this casting down at the Denman Hotel. And down there, check it out. And I did. And they cast me. I went in literally shoeless. at the time. And they said, "You willing to dye your hair, bleach it?" I said, "Yeah." I didn't care. I mean, what really did I care? Anyway, so I was like, "Oh yeah, good." They said, "Oh, it's going to happen for like, and so are you free?" I said, I was homeless at the time. "Yeah, I'm pretty free." And so started it all. And they gave me like $3 a week, which is yet another thing that, does not happen nowadays, even with those suits or anything. Maybe in this indie world it does, but that was in itself. So yeah, Nash was in it. Ray Winston, famous English actor, Dan Lane, like you mentioned, Seggles, Fee Waybill from the Tubes was the guy, and people that were in all different scenes. And it was Lou Adler who directed.
Right. He did a whole bunch of movies.
And he had directed the Rocky Horror. So he was really respected. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, there is a mad delay. I don't know what is going on necessarily. I hate asking this, Debbie, but do you mind calling, like calling back in, like cutting out, come back in? Maybe that'll fix it.
No, let me call you back.
Okay, maybe that'll fix it. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Technical difficulties.
This problem. Yeah. Let me call you right back. Hold on. Hold on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Fabulous Stains, we talked a little bit about that. And then it turned out, and this is something I didn't know either, you were in Vampire's Kiss. I guess you were one of the bar patrons there, and that's a movie that we covered on Indie Film Cafe.
Yeah. Yeah. And I never forget it because, it was a really big production, obviously, but I was just sitting just a few people down from Nicolas Cage. And it's funny because to turn out to be such a massive, incredible fan of his and to watch him work, and I was still in the mind, and Jennifer Beals, I mean, I was probably more familiar with her at that time than him because she had done Flashdance, which was pretty massive. Like, even if that's not in your wheelhouse of movies, it was really big at that point. Sure. So yeah, I mean, it was really quite amazing. And what amazed me watching that movie being made, as well as the Stains movie, was I was watching people and I was thinking, gee, from like really baby eyes, like non-actor eyes yet, because I hadn't had any training. And I was thinking, it just doesn't look like they're doing anything. Like, I couldn't understand until I started training and everything that they were doing a lot, but you can't see it with the bare eye. The camera picks it all up though. So it's kind of this magical thing. It's different, obviously, doing stage than film. So that sort of stood out to me, to watch people just be so like understated. Meanwhile, people in the background were like doing anything they could to get noticed, right? Because your background, hey, and meanwhile, the stars were just like.
It's funny. I don't know that I've ever associated the term understated with Nicolas Cage for that particular performance, because he specifically wanted to go big with that character, and boy, did he go big. And very few actors can pull that off. I mean, on the one hand, you could say it's overacting, but at the same time, I was absolutely mesmerized by Nicolas Cage in that film. You literally had no idea what he was going to do next, and it was fascinating.
It was the scene I was in, you have to understand, was an understated scene. It wasn't like the rest of the movie. And I couldn't agree with you more. That's my favorite stuff that he's done. And I don't care. And I know he has a massive amount of fans, so it doesn't matter. But if somebody doesn't like him, well, I mean, I don't know what to say other than you have to go along with him. He's so inspired and crazy and fun. And that is the kind of performance the risk takers even if it seems like to once in a while, like maybe they didn't hit the mark. And I'm not saying that he didn't, but I'm just saying, like, you always take that chance, right?
He made his own marks.
He made his own marks. Yes, exactly. Yeah. But he always took chances. Those are the kind of performances that I love the most.
I just love that they make GIFs and what is it? Memes all about Vampire's Kiss, and not a lot of people, like I wasn't even familiar with it before Paul decided to use that as a movie for Indie Film Cafe. I wasn't even familiar with it, so it was funny that so many people do that, because not many people know where it's from, like know where those memes come from, and everything.
Right.
Well, it's funny how things are, because Nicolas Cage, to me, he absolutely stole Valley Girl. And originally, when I first went to see Valley Girl, it's because Deborah Foreman. I was like, oh, I want to see Deborah Foreman. I was in high school, and I'm like, she's gorgeous. I want to check this out. But Nicolas Cage completely stole that film. Something very similar happened when I first noticed you the very first time in a film with Romeo and Juliet. And I went away from that thinking, my goodness, who the heck is Ness? I want to know all about that actress. She was fabulous in a small role, but very, very memorable.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I appreciate that. And I don't blame people for just coming out and saying, oh, it's the lesbian character. Well, she was. I mean, that's fine. That's great. I mean, if that makes you remember it, that's completely fine. But I remember that's all that people talked about for a long time. And again, making big choices and not always hitting your mark. I was still really rough when I was making that movie, but I felt like I was making as big choices as I possibly could. And yeah, I mean, at some points I was able to hit, like I say, even though I was so green still at that point. But yeah, I'm really proud to have been in that movie, because it does represent an awful lot of stuff that I was trying to get right still. And it was so early on. Some of the stuff for me, it's hard to watch because I could see what wasn't working, but I could see what was working. And, you know, it was just a magical time. One of those things, like James Gunn and more so than Lloyd. Lloyd had his regulars, like Joe Flyshaker, for example.
But I miss Joe so much. Like,
I know. It did not seem fair how it felt like how soon we lost him, but he really had been sick for quite a while. But and it was really sad how he really got on his own case and just had so much self-loathing towards the end. That's really heartbreaking for me.
I will say, back before he passed away, I was talking with him about a project or whatever that unfortunately didn't get made, but also if it were going to get made, unfortunately he wouldn't have been able to be in it. But we were talking, me and him, and he was just one of the nicest guys I've ever chatted with on the phone. And I just, like, I had him on MySpace back then, and me and him just, you know what I mean? And like, I was just like, oh man, I want to work with this guy so much. And fortunately this stuff happened and he passed away. And I was just like, you know what? It's just a bummer.
Yes, it really, really was. And, you know, the writing was on the table before he was homebound, as I'm sure that you guys already know, or at least Jonathan knows, that when he would show up and do films towards the end of his life, oftentimes he had to do scenes where he didn't have to leave his car.
Yeah.
Like the filmmakers would have to come down and shoot him in his car.
He wanted to do it at his house, actually, the scene. Okay. So he invited me over to do it there, but unfortunately we just didn't. We had a producer who had like claimed he had money, and then unfortunately didn't have any money. And
that never happens, does it?
That never happens. That's a weird anomaly. Jonathan, you're talking to the wrong people, because it's just
so unfortunately that movie didn't happen. I don't think we didn't get it. Maybe you're involved with it. No, I think at that point you weren't yet, and then it didn't happen anyway, so it's okay.
So it's okay.
Well, I do have a couple of questions I was hoping you would answer. And then if you don't want to, I understand. That's perfectly fine too. But some other of your earlier work too, we just covered another film by Carl J. Sukanik. And from what I gather, you have worked with him on a couple of projects, supposedly. And
Toxic Retards.
Yes, I am dying to know what it's like to work on a set for Carl J. Sukanik, because I've heard a few stories.
Wow. Okay, well, completely for the record, Carl J. Sukanik is one of my superheroes. I think the guy is sincerely genius. I think he's almost too smart to be making movies, because his stuff is just, it's like, I don't want to say otherworldly, but I want to say like it's strung together in the most subconscious manner, and you have to follow along almost like an art film.
It's like a stream of consciousness.
Thank you. That's really what I was looking for. Thank you very much. It's a stream of consciousness movie. So all of this stuff. Now, there's such a long story to tell with Carl J. Sukanik, but I'm going to try my best to streamline it for you. Okay, so way back, going to rewind 99, and he had contacted me. I'm not even entirely sure how. It was by mail. My post office box.
Yeah, wow. I think he did everything by mail.
Yes. So it was my post office box in New York City. He had sent me a letter and said he was making a movie. He lived with his mother in the West Village. And at that time I was living in Murray Hill, and in New York, if people don't know, it's sort of like Midtown, a little bit on the lower Midtown on the east side. And he had sent me this letter, and he said he wanted to make a movie. And so I called him, and I was like talking to him, and he says, yeah, I want to mail you the pages of the script. So he went ahead and did that. And I was like, well, this is interesting. I mean, it's just like one scene, like really, it was just one scene. And then he made arrangements, and he said, oh, I'll, take a taxi over, just cross town, take a taxi over, and, we'll do the scene. I'm just going to shoot in my apartment. It's a very, relaxed kind of scene. And then I'll pay you. Then you go on your way and pay for the taxi back home. Just take a couple of hours. Okay. No problem. I mean, no problem. If you want to do it there, that's fine. Went there, and he had this camera that was one of those, even for then, it was way out of date. Like it was just so huge and had the entire VHS tapes in them. So even for like 99, 2000, it was old. You know what I mean? Like that wasn't even that old then, if you think about it, but it was really archaic looking, and it was huge, and he had it on a tripod. And so he did like the few lines with me, and he said, okay, that's great. And I said, no coverage or anything? You're good? Like, you're really good? You sure? Like, I could do it again. I could do it another way. I could do another angle. And, and he's like, no. This is exactly what I want. Exactly. And I was like, okay, it sounds really, really good to me. So he took me downstairs into the laundry room. God bless his mother, who's now passed away, unfortunately. And he said, hey, Ma, pay her. And I'm like, I'm really feeling like I'm shaking somebody down. Like, I feel like this isn't exactly, it doesn't feel like a, you know what I mean? Like a professional transaction. I feel like robbing a little old lady in a laundry, room in a basement of an apartment on the west side. That's what I felt like. Anyway, she did, and I felt horrible. I was like, oh my God, is this her, like, pension. I don't know what it is, maybe whatever. And so I was like, okay, well, this is how they do it. This is how he wants to do it. So I'm rolling with it. So, so I took it, I left, and that was the end of it. So he sends me a letter. And then the letter said that none of the footage came out. Like it didn't work. But it was okay, but he was going to somehow fix it. And I was thinking, well, how on earth do you fix the no footage working out? I felt horrible. I really did, especially after the mother in the basement thing. Like that was like really, really like, it was really not disturbing. So I'm not going to judge their life, you know what I mean? But it was really weird. And so I said, are you sure? I'm on the phone with him at this point. I says, you're good. Like, you're really good. And he says, yeah. I'm going to make this work. It's going to be great. So I find out that later on, he has no footage. Like it didn't work at all. Like they didn't check it or nothing. I guess just pressed a button and hoped it would work. Maybe out of nerves or something like that. You know what I mean? You're not fully paying attention to the equipment or whatever. And I see that he's now using an 8x10 of me in the movie, a picture. And he's saying that I'm in the movie, but I don't have any, there's no voice track, or there's certainly no video because it didn't come out. And so now he's using an 8x10 saying I'm one of the stars of the movie. And I thought this was the funniest, excuse me, I don't know if you swear on the show, but
you can.
Feel free.
Funniest shit I've ever heard in my life. An 8x10. My 8x10 can act in your movie. Then God, I must
yes.
So that was it. That's your only contribution, is an 8x10 in the movie. So now you're starring in the movie.
Yes.
Well, we will just say.
I'm not done, but you can ask that question. But
go ahead.
I just wanted to, just in case you were going away from the Carl J. Sukenick topic. That's why I wanted to fit this in, because the kicker would then become every movie, like, and he had this kind of obsession for listing them in the Hollywood Reporter. And back then, all you had to do was to write to them and list your movie, and they'll have it in pre-production in their section in the actual magazine. And so, I mean, that's all you had to do. And it was always like space, blah, 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 starring Debbie Rochon. And all he had was the picture, but the picture was in like 7 movies.
Yeah, like you and Joe Franklin were like his 2 biggest stars. It was just amazing. And it's funny because I read online, I don't know if it was one of the SRS guys or who it was, but they had described that his mother had actually walked like 5 or 6 blocks or however long it took to go to your apartment to pay you.
No.
Okay, so that's interesting.
No. Oh, no. That's not true at all. No, okay. That's not true at all. I mean, mine's, I think, weirder. No, his mother, his mother never left the building at all. And so no, that's not true whatsoever. But he did ask her to go into, which I didn't know when I got there, only when I left. He had told her to go into the laundry room in the basement and sit there and wait while he was making his movie in the apartment. And so obviously when I got there, she wasn't there. But yeah, when we left, we went down to the laundry room, and that's when I met his mother down there. But no, she didn't. She would never make it. I mean, I was across town. He was way on the west side. I was like almost on the water on the east side.
That makes more sense. But there are a lot of stories that come out of Carl J. Sukenick, and that's kind of one reason why I wanted to talk to you about that, because he is a very unique talent, to say the least.
Yes, and I think, he's also said things like, not to cut you off, Jonathan, but he's also said things, because I've seen him, things like, he's flown me in from like different countries and stuff like that, or different parts, that this couple different stories that he said, couple different places from within the US and then from outside the US, flew me in to do that movie. I was only a taxi ride away cross town. That's the real bottom line story. Like,
maybe
but
your 8x10 is flying around.
Yeah. And the 8x10 is flying around and starring in the movie. I mean, maybe he did fly in. Let's be honest. Maybe he flew in the 8x10. That's possible.
There you go.
We don't know. We don't know this, but God bless Carl J. Sukanek. I am a huge fan and I love him. I also think he's working out of a different dimension than a lot of us are.
Yeah, I totally get that.
That's a nice way of putting it for sure.
Yeah, there you go. So he got my headshot. He got his money's worth very well from the use of my headshot starring in his movies after all these years. And I think it might still to this day.
Wow. I'm just amazed at the breadth of folks that you have worked with. Both Moody and I are huge fans of Lloyd. And also Chris Seaver. We're big Chris Seaver fans. You made a bunch of things with Chris Seaver. You've worked with Donald Farmer. You've worked with Darren Brown. You've worked with so many people. And there are just so many movies that I would love to talk with you about. It's really difficult to just sort of pick and choose. But one of the ones I really was hoping we could talk about, one of my absolute favorites that you've done, was one of the ones you made back in 2004, Dr. Horror's Erotic House of Idiots, which I absolutely love. It's become one of my favorite movies. And the idea that to me, this is like an all-star game of people that I have loved for years. So Trent Haga and Conrad Brooks and Michael Thomas, people that I absolutely love.
Tina Kraus. Tina Kraus. We just worked with her. So,
right.
I mean,
what was it like being on set for that?
Oh boy. Well, it's funny because Paul Scrabo I'd already known him and he was a friend. Like I'd done his TV show and such. He had a beautiful setup. And he's as you know, him and his wife worked for their entire careers at NBC, working specifically on lighting and different aspects for Saturday Night Live and all this kind of stuff. That's where they met Michael Thompson, because he did the special effects for Saturday Night Live and many other things too, of course. But so I initially met him doing sort of the interview and stuff rounds, and from around as well, the New York conventions. And he wrote Dr. Horror's Erotic House of Idiots for that role for me and the some of the other people. He didn't have it all cast yet, but he was a lot of people he had in mind very specifically for the roles. And when I said to him, I said, when I read this, it is like, so it's just jumping off the page. I know when something's good because a script will like jump off the page with ideas for me. It won't just be like, oh, okay, A, B, C. Okay, now I really got to think of things to bring to this to make it interesting for me and hopefully the audience, do what I can. But I have to really do a lot of work on it. With his, it was like it was already there. And then anything I brought would like sort of like jack it up further. But upon reading it, I said to him, I know exactly who would kill this role, my friend Trent Haga. And he had just moved to LA, like from New York. He was doing like a lot of New York stuff, like with Trauma and everything. And so he agreed, like he said, yeah, okay, let's get Trent. And then Trent agreed to do it. And he came out and did it. And so many other great people in the movie, like you say, like before the role that Conrad Brooks had in the movie, that was for Zachary. But Zachary was getting up there and he said to Paul, he said he was really afraid that he wouldn't remember all the lines. And so he wanted to be in the movie, but a smaller part, something that he was more comfortable with. So then Paul had to think and fill the spot, and he did so with Conrad Brooks, staying in the tune of the right era of film star, which was perfect, right? Conrad Brooks. So and then working off of Michael Thomas, which is always a dream, like it's nothing less than a dream. So yeah, I mean, it was really incredible because there wasn't at any point that you were ever working in a scene with somebody that you felt like you weren't getting a whole bunch from. Like even Nathan, the third, person who came for help to the clinic. He was this amazing stage actor that was funny. And so there wasn't a single actor that you weren't in a scene with that wasn't like bringing it and giving you 110% and so much to work off of. What a joy. What joy.
It definitely comes through, and I'm really happy that Moody suggested that film. And when I saw it, I said we have to show this to everyone on the planet, because this is just exactly the sort of film that you want to see. And I really enjoyed the chemistry that your character and Trent Haga had on screen there. I just thought they was fabulous together.
Yeah, and it's, a lot of it comes from, we had all the trauma experience at that point. We had Terra Firma and Citizen Toxie. Something that, I always bring up, and I always feel bad about bringing it up because it's such a fun comedy. But the weird thing was early on in the shoot, just a couple days into the shoot, 9/11 happened. And we literally were watching it on the set.
Ugh.
Paul's shooting in the basement. There's a basement scene with Conrad Brooks, and he's fallen down, and they're doing their stuff, and we're waiting upstairs, and the whole thing's playing out on CNN. And so that was like really weird to go from that being right in the middle of New York, like so to speak, and it happening anywhere. It was weird, but just being there and having to do such a big comedy, that was the stress. That goes to, I mean, it's no disrespect to anybody from that day that, but to be able to still do a comedy with that going on, that right there was a testament to the people that were involved, I think.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'll never forget that day either. I was in the field. I've been an archaeologist most of my career, and I happened to be on a project in West Virginia, an Army Corps of Engineers site, and that's the plane that ended up going down in Pennsylvania flew over us, and we had no idea. And then these guys from the Army Corps showed up with sidearms and said, "Everyone has to leave now." Right. So we all had to go back to our hotels, and then that's when we found out.
That is crazy. Oh, look at that. You see just how many people actually came in contact with. I mean, it affected everybody, but that's amazing that the planes went right over you guys. That's crazy. Yeah. Oh my God. What a day.
So that's, go ahead, John.
Well, I was just going to say, I also wanted to mention real quick, and I mean, I picked that movie for us to do, and another movie I plan to do at some point that you're in that I absolutely adore, and it was the first time I ever saw you in a movie, by the way. It's a little movie that Charles Band produced called Dead and Rotting. Yeah. And I absolutely adore that movie. It was the first time I saw you. I think Trent's in that movie, if I'm correct, too. And Jeff Dylan Graham, just like a powerhouse of people. Can you tell us a little bit about that one?
Yeah, absolutely. David Barton, the director of that movie, is this super insanely nice guy. It was shot in Ohio. And that was perfect location for the movie, of course. Yep. And it was really, the Pumpkinhead type of zombie-ish characters, the monsters were just really like, David Barton's a special effects guy first, and J.R. Bookwalter gave him this opportunity to direct, which is, that's what J.R. does a lot. Like, he's really amazing. Like, he was amazing when he was running the Shadow Entertainment for Charles Band, because he would give a lot of directors a shot that really wouldn't have gotten it otherwise, like gotten their movie paid for. I mean, like, even if it was tiny budget. And but David was like super easy to work with and just fun. He was very laid back. So considering how cold it was and the stuff we had to shoot, and the amount of time we had, which was just a few days to get this massive amount of material shot. And he was so laid back, that really helped a lot. And I was, of course, happy to, see Jeff again. I mean, I'd worked with him a couple times at that point. We just, the circle was smaller, if you will, then. So you kept running into the same people more often, which was fun. It was good, especially if you got along. It was super good. And Trent was in there because he was a part of Full Moon when him and his wife had moved out to LA. I said to JR, I said, oh my God, this amazing guy's moved out there. You have to get him into Killjoy 2, which was the first thing they were shooting when Trent moved out there. And he's like, no, we have it booked and all this stuff. But I just didn't let it go. And then finally, JR, God bless him, said, okay. He can do it. He can do the Killjoy, but he's got a line producer. I forget how it went. The opposite. Who knows? And anyway, he became a part of the Full Moon family after that, because I knew all you had to do was meet Trent, and he could just sell himself without selling himself. It was just his talent. You just had to see his talent in person, and then it just speaks for itself. I don't have to say it. So I was really happy to make that connection. I'm very proud of that, because it was the first movie he wrote. What was turned out to be produced by them too. But Dead and Rotting was nothing but good memories. I mean, I gotta say, it was really nothing but good memories. Just done in a small town in Ohio. It was Halloween time, so the vibe was just, right there. You could just feel it. Every single person on that set working behind the camera, in front of the camera, was cool. There was nothing bad to report. I mean, I just have great memories of that one. A couple of things I would do different when I look at the movie, but you don't get a lot of chances when you're making indie movies like that.
Right. And you always second guess sometimes.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's like if you said the line and it was like pretty good, or the director thought it was good, moving on. Right. That's it. There isn't 20 takes.
Right. We've got 32 scenes to shoot tonight. We got to do it.
That's it. 32 pages. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So Paul, you were going to say something before?
Well, I wanted to sort of just to segue from Conrad Brooks. You've also worked with a mutual friend of ours, John Johnson, in John Johnson's Skeleton Key. And I was going to ask you a little bit about that.
Boy, that was, one thing I will say is that it was very, very brief because of the size of the role. Mm-hmm. It was really the Skeleton Key, and it was before Hollywood put out, just ironically, a movie with the same name. Not right. It seemed like a year or two later, something like that. But John Johnson as the original Skeleton Key, he was so nice and funny, and it was like reading his script, I was like, this guy has really got something extra special. Like really, you just know it, right? It's extra special, and he had it. And I was just a small part, almost like I'm not sure what movie to compare it to if people haven't seen it. It's worth finding, though. It really is. But it's like a couple guys go to a town where basically they run into everybody and everything that you could, just to make it simple. And I was like, this vampire woman that they ran into.
I loved you in that.
Yes, you do.
so much fun. But again, it was super brief. So the only memory I have is just having fun. Like when you're at a place for only 1 or 2 days, you just go in, have fun, and you leave. And there was so many times that we meant to do other movies together, and then it just wouldn't work out to it timing wise or this or that. And I know he's made a ton of movies, but yeah, it was. I always had so much respect for him because I thought he had that special extra something that not everybody has.
And I believe Brink Stevens was in there too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He was very, very smart. He got all the key people, so to speak. So
That was smart. He's a sweet guy. We both love him. We've had him actually guest on the show with us before, and twice already, and we're hoping to have him back. At whenever he is able to do it. And thankfully via Zoom we can do it a lot easier. We
Yeah.
don't have to like go see him or anything. But
Right.
he's a sweet freaking guy. And I adored you in Skeleton Key. I've seen it. I love that movie. And yeah, I was kind of sad that you haven't done anything else with them yet. I'm saying yet because there's still time.
Yeah, there is still time. Well, hey, none of us know how much time, but yes, at this juncture, there still is time. I mean, it just seems like we lose people, and it seems as though it's so random and so out of the blue. Sometimes it can kind of make sense if people are really up there in age, but otherwise, you just don't know. I mean, look, we lost Julie Strain, young woman.
Yeah.
I mean, we've lost a lot of people. So yeah, you really don't know. And that's why I always look back and I say to myself, even in like 97, when I made Hell Block 13 with Gunnar Hansen, we had always communicated by mail. Of course, he lived in Maine and I was in New York. So we used to write each other letters, just, hey, how's it going? Because we met at a convention and just checked in. That's all. Simple as that. We said, oh, I'm going to do something. And, he told me what he was up to and what life was like in Maine and just all that kind of stuff. Then we did Hell Block 13 together in 97, came out in 99. And at that time, because I was lived on the street as a kid, preteen and then teen, and had such a rough upbringing and hard upbringing that honestly, after I made that movie with him, I said to myself, if something, God forbid, something happened to me tomorrow, I could say that I went all the way from being, sleeping under a bridge to starring in a movie with Gunnar Hansen. So I feel like, I really did something. And so it's funny. So, and I had that feeling then that I was really, that I had done something, like I came all that way. And so I felt so good. And then of course, since then, I have different goals and stuff like that, but I'll never forget that moment. And I guess what I'm saying is you really have to appreciate all of your successes. And by success, it doesn't mean everybody has to like it, right? It just means that you accomplish something, you finish something. If you finish a movie, you have a success, trust me. Even if a lot of people don't like it, you'll find your audience. If you've written a book, if you've done a podcast, whatever you've done, you have done it. You've actually gone out and done it, not just thought about it or talked about it. And you need to take that, success, if you will, and take in the good to enjoy the whole journey, I guess is what I'm saying, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I hear you. And I after Jonathan told me that we were going to get a chance to interview you, I was really excited. And I was thinking, I remember reading about how you had this very, very rough upbringing and how, God forbid, your life could have gone in a number of different directions and not a lot of them would have been good. And how blessed it is that not only did you came on this direction, how it's been great for yourself, but how great it's been for the rest of us. And it's just you've made so many movies, and in every single one that I've ever seen, you've just hit it out of the park. It's just been fabulous. And I was just wondering if you've thought back on your time and your career. And I mean, I just can't picture you doing anything else but being this great performer, a great actress. I was just wondering if you've ever thought about what other things you might have tried to do, because I also noticed that you've also done some producing, some writing, and some directing, and if there are other things that you would like to try.
Right. Well, it's interesting because putting like food money jobs, that sort of thing aside, because we'll take that out of the equation. I've always worked on and off in radio. The world is about podcasts now, I know, but going back, I'd always worked since the early 90s in radio, whether it was producing, running the board, being a co-host, doing all of the above, doing one of the above for somebody else's show. There were many times where there'd be like maybe 3-4 years, chunks of time where I was really involved in the radio business in New York City. So WBAI was the first place I worked at. I worked at Pseudo Radio, which was the very first internet radio ever.
Oh,
that's
wow.
Pretty amazing. Yeah. It was like, pseudo.com, Pseudo Radio. And that was 95 or 6 it started. And then I did IATA.com, and that was still in the concept of everything had to be super big radio style. But it just happens to be streaming, but it was ahead of its time. So Chase Bank, that put all these millions of dollars into IATA.com to get the hosts that it wanted and to build the studios and do all this kind of stuff. The ad revenue just wasn't trusting it, because this was 99 to 2002. That was only as long as it lasted. But the first like 45 million went into all of that, the building of it, the salaries, like it was like a lot of expenses, but it was too soon. And then ultimately what happened was, and then of course I worked on Sirius, which is Sirius XM now, for a number of years, 4 years, doing the Fango show. But now everything's podcast. So, and I have a podcast. It's a narrative though. It's not an interview show like what you guys do. And so like I've experienced, I feel like, all the different versions of radio throughout those years. I probably really would have gone into radio. I probably would have ended up just simply focusing on that, because it was always my second or third love, because I love writing too. I'm not a script writer at all. That's not what I do. I don't profess to be it. I don't see myself doing it. It's not how I think. I leave that to the people who know how to do that. But I love writing. And so if I couldn't act, it would definitely be a combo of writing and probably radio. There's a lot more money in radio than there is writing. So probably radio.
Definitely. And you didn't you do Fangoria Radio for a little bit?
Yeah.
If I'm correct. Yeah. So I remember you on that. I listened to it just for you.
Oh, isn't that sweet? Thank you so much.
Oh yeah, you're one of those people where you see a title of a movie, you're not really sure, then you see, Debbie Rochon, we'll watch it.
Yeah, you're on Tubi, like probably a million movies on Tubi. So
thank God, because you know what, Jonathan, a lot of those movies are out of print.
Mm-hmm.
Not all of them, but a lot of them. So
right.
I'm telling you, thank God for Tubi, because there's thousands of movies on there from all kinds of artists that do not exist in the physical world anymore. And that's, it's almost like archival place, Tubi. Who knew? And so I love Tubi. The more I see it, I finally got it. Like finally, after all this time, just a couple of months ago. And I could watch it every night. Just forget cable, forget, Netflix once in a while, you could buy it and catch up on everything and then let it run out if, you haven't got the money to buy everything. But Tubi, man, is just like...
Yeah, Moody and I are both very big physical media people, and we collect movies. And I've been collecting movies since, the early 80s, back with VHS all the way up to, to today. And, people don't understand, there's a ton of VHS movies that never came out in DVD. And there's a ton of movies that came out in DVD that have never come out in Blu-ray. And each time we're getting this new technological innovation, it's also shrinking the choices that we have as far as films go. So whenever I see a film that I like and I want, I grab it. So we're both nerdy collector guys that have tons and tons of physical media.
I am telling you right now with absolutely no exaggeration, I have literally thousands of DVDs, way more than I should. Not because there's anything wrong with it, don't get me wrong, but some of them, here's the thing, some of them were definitely one-watch movies. If somebody said this movie's coming out, you can go see it. I don't think necessarily stream it at that time or buy it. I would always be buy it, have it, keep it, love it, love it, love it. But as it turned out, I probably have at least 200 DVDs that are one-watch movies. They're not like the ones that you and I, the three of us, are really referring to, like the classics or the cult movies or the great horror movies or whatever. But they're just sort of like, see them once and honestly, you'll never watch them again.
Well, it takes a lot for me to like watch over and over again. And a lot of the movies that you've been in, I can watch over and over again, mainly because of you. I think Paul can agree.
Right.
Very, very kind. Listen, I've always said, like, if people get a kick out of it because they're laughing, like it's funny, it's campy. Campy movies are some of my favorite movies. I mean, Criminally Insane. I love that movie. It's hilarious. I mean, there's so many really funny movies. And, for people to find the humor, like in Santa Claus, I watch that and I'm bent over laughing. And then I'm laughing even harder when I hear or realize that anybody is trying to take, while watching it, the movie seriously. I'm like, it was made seriously. That's the thing. That's why it works as camp, because it was done sincerely. Only movies that are done sincerely, unless you're a genius, which is more than rare. They're not, you can't intentionally make it a camp movie or a cult classic. Like you can't.
Right. And that's one of the reasons why we do the show that we do, is because, we do love the physical media. And then usually when the physical media is bought, usually the artist gets the money, which is great. We love supporting independent filmmaking. Yeah. But whether we love it, whether we thought it was awful, whether we think it was in between, it doesn't matter. We always promote it. We always say, here's where you can get it. If the artist has their own website where you can buy it straight from the artist, we usually go to that first. But if not, we'll say it's on Amazon or it's on, one of the Prime or one of the streaming places, wherever you can go to get it. We want you to get it because, we want these movies to be seen and we want that everybody who made them will get paid. That's what we're hoping for.
Yes. Thank God for you guys. Really.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Well, okay. Sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. Debbie, I know we don't have a lot of time left. So two movies I wanted to mention that are both, one of them was just on our show recently. It was Witch House 3, which we adore you on. You, Tina, Brink, I think Tanya Dempsey, just amazing cast right there. Directed by Jared Bookwalter. I mean, can you tell us anything about that film?
Oh boy. Well, okay. So when Jared sent me the script for that, I had not worked with him prior. And I know that Ariana Albright had done the role, or the Lilith role, I should say, be specific, in the first one and the second one. So I was like, oh, well, she wasn't going to be in the third one. Brink was doing her role. And then you had these three other women, as sort of balancing it out, really scaled down, because I want to say that he made that for $26,000.
Oh, wow.
That includes flying me and Tina out, putting us up. We stayed together, Tina and I, in a motel. That was very, very nice. But, it was funny too, because side note, even though we were shooting for only a few days total. I think Tina had, maybe it was a full day off or something. And she said, I'm going with a friend of mine to Tijuana. I'll see you tomorrow. And I was like, oh, okay, sure, no problem. Now,
that sounds like Tina.
It sounds
Yeah.
like Tina.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what she did. And I was just thinking to myself, because I knew her, but I don't think I had done a movie with her. I'm pretty sure at that point. And I was thinking, I hope she comes back. Like, not that, she wouldn't come back, but like, I was like, Tijuana, is that like, is it good? Is it bad? I don't know. I've never been there. Is this, good idea to go there? I don't know. So, but she did come back. Thank God. And she was awesome. So much fun to work with. Like, really, I had a lot of laughs. And I'll give JR credit, giving him a lot of credit in this show, and well deserved. He was able to, Danny Draven, who went on to do some really awesome movies himself, be an amazing author. His books are incredible. Like, really, movie making books and interview books are just beautiful. Like, they're just pieces of art. I don't know. Last I heard, he lived in Vegas. Anyway, he was the DP, always had such a good eye. And so he was starting out off, and Jared had hired him. And we were all kind of working together for the first time, really. I mean, I had done a couple of small things with Brink already prior to that. But yeah, it was like really one of the first times that we all had been in like the same room in massive, I want to add, massive heat. Like, holy shit. It was just one of those times, one of those years that was like super, super hot. And but the amount of pressure that Jared was under to get what he needed to get done, and the fact that he was able to, and I thought it was a really, really good script by Matthew Walsh. I thought he really did an excellent job, because he knew, he was smart enough to write everything in a very limited amount of locations. That's, one of the things that we all know now, but not everybody knew back then. Is like, just keep the locations super simple. And I learned so much from JR. I know probably the funnier stories are more interesting, but just, watching him work, shooting day for night and switching it in post. I mean, the guy was really so far ahead of his time, because he really came out of that shot on video Maverick eras. It was, Kevin Lindenmuth, Ron Bonk, and Jared Bookwalter. And I'm not even sure if, they're all like buddy friends, but which is ironic. And usually the way it works out, if you go back in Hollywood, it's the same story when everybody had their own studio back in the day. But they all were like coming out at the same time, like sort of like just paving the road for everybody, really. And so one of the things I learned from Jared was, okay, no, I could shoot this and I can blow it up. It's going to look like night. And I was like, okay, sure you can. I believed him, but I was like, I'd never seen it done before. So, and all these things are so common now. It's just taken for granted. But, he was doing all of those kind of like post tricks, if you will, to save time and money, and not having to like go out in the middle of the night with the crew and get all the shots that you needed at night, unless it was absolutely necessary. So, yeah.
I was looking at some of my notes, and it looks like you go all the way back to '98 in Vampire Seduction with Tina Kraus. And you've done a lot of stuff with Tina, and then you've also done a lot of stuff with Tiffany Shepis. And it seems like they're the two you've done most work with. Was that intentional, or did it just happen that way?
Well, I think it just happened that way. I think it's location, and I think it's it just happens that way. Like, for being based in New York, you just end up working with, even though you work with people all over the country, you end up working, if you're doing like most of your stuff local, say 70% of your stuff local, you're going to end up working with the same people. And I think that was a big part of it. And whereas like out in LA, where it was happening, trust me, it was happening, but it wasn't as common as it is now, where everybody just shoots in their home state and takes advantage of the beauty of their home state, right? Which is the way to go. But back then it was sort of like coast or coast. So in LA, you had your actresses that you could get and not have to fly them out because it's expensive. Sure. And so, you know, you would just end up doing like a lot of stuff on the East Coast with people because of location. Really, that was like a really big part of it. And then also, you know, I think a lot of us, we learned early on, which is not different. It's completely different in a lot of ways, but it was not different than social media time. You learn really early on that, you know, you have to be your own press agent in a lot of ways. Then you had to do it in a far more subtle manner. Like it wasn't about just doing like selfies, like, oh, you know, mailing to, and I'm not putting them down. I'm giving an example that's honest.
Sure.
Like wasn't about mailing, physically mailing a bunch of selfies, for example, that you took on a set and saying, hey, you know, look at that. It was like, you'd have to think of a pitch. You'd have to get the photographs together. Back then it was slides. And so you had to get the slides from the filmmaker. You had to, you know, write out on the typewriter, you know, all of the stuff, you know, all of the something that might entice somebody to write about it, because our only communication was through physical magazines. So you had to go to them, whether it be a zine, photocopied damn zine, or a big glossy magazine. Yeah. And so you had to like attempt to reach all of them and, you know, talk about the film, basically be a PR person for the entire film, really, because nobody was going to tolerate just, you know, you doing you. I mean, maybe once in a while, and maybe if, I don't know, but yeah, it was different. And again, not saying one's better, one's worse, but I think you guys are on the same page as me as far as like physical media is just where it's at. Like I love to hold a magazine. I like to hold the movie, right? Like it's just me. Now people like to live without clutter, perhaps, or whatever the case may be. They don't want all the stuff. And they like to have everything on their device. They don't have it, you know, they don't have to dedicate an entire room to stuff like I do, which I do. Entire room to, you know, everything like, you know, in its order, but still it's, you know,
but they don't have it, you know, they don't actually have it. They have a ghost of it. They don't have it. And that's the thing. It's
true though. That's how I feel. And really, I try not to judge, but yes, that's how I feel. It's really how I feel. And that's why, you know, when we lost Joe Kane, 30 plus years making video scope from a zine, like a photocopied zine, to the nice pulp publication that it was right until the end. And I said this on Facebook, and I meant this. It wasn't a joke or a ridiculous comparison. I said he was like the editor, writer, publisher version in the underground world of David Bowie. And what do I mean by that? David Bowie released an album on his death. That videos and everything else, like it was this explosion of stuff that was to not come out until he passed. Right. And it was the same thing happened with Joe. I mean, it was just before he passed, but the last issue of his magazine, he lived for that magazine. I mean, that was his life's work. And that's why I was just like, it's strange I'm comparing the two, but there is a comparison to be made. Like your life in art, and for even within your dying, that you're still aware of it, if that makes sense. And so I say to people who haven't done so yet, and you are going to write in for your Rondo Awards, that you would consider special recognition. I put in myself, I'm asking anybody willing to listen to me, to put in Joe Kane there, because it would just be such a lovely thing for his wife to get after his passing. But anyway, that's physical, all about it.
Well, thank you. I do one last question. I mean, unless maybe Paul has one more too. But
I'll have one more.
yeah. I do gotta ask you about Model Hunger, which is your directorial debut, and I gotta know, was it weird a little bit to be behind the camera and have that kind of thing, and how as an actress who's so prolific and has been doing stuff for so long and has seen so many different directors direct, did you take things from certain people, or did you kind of just come in there and do your own thing, when you directed?
Well, I gotta say, I really had a lot of assistance in certain areas that I really needed the assistance in, not when it came to directing the movie, but in the line producing of the movie. I really, because there was a lot of people and things and locations that had to be, we were shooting the whole thing, in a row, so to speak, in 22 days. So we made the whole movie in 22 days without stopping. And that takes a lot of organization, getting people coming and going, actors coming in town, leaving town, staying here or there, so there's a lot of stuff. So I really relied heavily on line producer Greg Lamberson, James Mogart, the writer and producer, did amazingly wonderful things for me to get through the shoot. The interesting thing on the shoot for me, though, was, even though I knew exactly what I wanted to do with the characters, and was more than thrilled to have the actors do what they wanted as well, and meet in the middle and create something and give every character, no matter how big or small, some sort of an arc. That was super important with me. Like, for example, if you've seen the movie, which this will only make sense if you have seen the movie, but Old Man Winters didn't have his last shot where he has the altar to Ginny in the script. But James was kind enough, because he was also producing it, so he could have definitely said no, was just let me had full reign and final cut and all of the creative important things. So I could not have been luckier. But to answer your question, which is such a big question, Jonathan, but I'm trying to do a truncated version in a certain way. I think the part that amazed me the most was that 99.99999% of the actors were kind of like I'd always been. You go on set and you make it happen, no matter what the circumstances are, what anything is. The only thing that matters is the square. Now, all the stuff going on could be wonderful outside of it. It could be terrible outside of it. But in 10 years from now, all that is forgotten. And the only thing that is ever remembered is what was captured in the frame, literally. So I've always been hyper aware of that. Like, if I'm working on a movie and there's some crazy either guys or gals or whatever, let them go crazy. Let them go crazy. And just, hopefully stay away from me and let me do my thing. But let them go crazy, because I know, even though you're dying for all of the attention of, say, the director or crew or whatever the case may be, to have it all. I am here working my ass off on what I have to do when they call action, when it's my turn. That's the only thing I'm concerned with. I'm not concerned about going out and drinking with everybody to be, a party favorite, party animal, party favorite, fun person. I'm not concerned with that. I'm kind of boring when it comes to that because I'm so obsessed with just thinking about that. Now, people may say, well, that's stupid to say that because, who cares who the party people are? It's all about performance. But you would be surprised how many people not only get hired because they're just because they're fun to be around over someone who may be a little bit more introverted, but they're obsessed with the work. All these things factor in. So I think you would be really surprised to find out what all that dynamic and how much it actually means when in this game that we call movie making. I have no idea if I answered your question, Jonathan.
You did. That was a great answer, actually. I really appreciated that. And it got me to know you a little bit more too from that. So thank you.
There you go.
Yeah, Paul, I think you have one last question you want to
Yeah, and I guess this is really kind of more of a comment, I guess. Now, I've always associated you with New York City, where, the bagels and pizza are far superior. There was a real, we are contemporaneous. We are very close to the same age. So we were sort of around the same time period. So you remember there was a real flowering of underground cinema in the 80s and going into the 90s. And I'm just kind of more surprised that you weren't involved with people like, Richard Kern and Jim Jarmusch, Nick Zed, Abel Ferrar, people like that. Were those opportunities just not there? Did you try? Was it not a bad timing or?
It was, I think I missed some of those particular artists. And it was a combination of things. To sort of simplify, I arrived in New York in 84. And I really studied and didn't even attempt to get any film work until 88, 89. So, there was a few years there. I wasn't even looking. I just needed to study and just try to get good. So I belonged to like 5, 6, 7 theater companies at the same time, as well as working at the Village Gate, like slinging drinks. Mm-hmm. So I was, that's what my focus was. Then by the time I started working with filmmakers, I was working with Roberta Finley. She had just, she had stopped doing porn and went into horror. And so that's when I started working with her, did like her 2 last movies before she retired. Chuck Vincent, same thing. He was a big porn director. And then he went into like more of the sexy Cinemax stuff. And his 2 last movies that he did in New York, I think he did a couple more before he passed away. I was in them, like the first one where Marilyn Chambers, her so-called like coming out straight movie, which it was. There was no sex in it. There was like some nudity, not in my part in that one, but for her. And she actually sang in the movie. Like it was kind of bizarre. Like if you think about it, it's really weird. In a mall, wow. She's singing a song in a mall. So it's like that alone, I think, deserves some kind of like interesting award for what. It's too bad she's not with us any longer. But yeah, so I did work with some super underground people, and then of course went on to work with Lloyd and stuff. But as far as like Kern goes, it was just slightly different groups of people working. I think at that time, Jim Jarmusch had already become pretty big by the end of the 80s. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, he was always indie and always so damn cool. But I think he was already, he was making the Lost in Paradise, and he was starting to get that sort of the art world to look at him and such.
Ferrer was probably a little more famous at that point too.
Yes, he was the closest though. He was the closest one because one of my acting teachers, Penny Allen, was also a personal acting coach for Harvey Keitel.
Oh.
And so, and this is one has nothing to do with the other, but this is just like how things collide, right? And I had gone through backstage, and so I was auditioning for like megatons things, everything from the, you know, call a psychic hotline TV commercials back then to, you know, movies and everything else in between. So I actually had 2 callbacks to play one of the girls that's in the car when in Bad Lieutenant, when Harvey Keitel is, you know, doing his thing. And so it was like this close. And then they wanted to go with someone who was more like, what would the word be? Like Girl Next Door or something. So I've always been, I think because of a combination of my who I am inside and what I've been through, where I came from. I don't think I ever embodied that, you know, sort of innocent girl next door vibe. I don't think that was ever my vibe, to be true to myself. So I think they were going for that, but it came super close. That was
wow.
So close.
How badass would it have been if you had been in Bad Lieutenant?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm telling you, it would have been.
It's amazing though, what you're talking about. One of the other podcasts I do is something called Sexploitation Sleazecast, and we tend to focus on directors like Ed Wood and Ray Dennis Steckler, who were longtime horror movie fans, but then towards the end of their careers, they had to go into porn in order to sort of put, you know, food on the table and continue their careers. And you end up working with people who were into porn for a long time, but we're leaving porn and we're finishing their careers making horror films.
Yes.
Kind of the direct opposite.
Yeah, exactly. And they were just, and if you think about it, talking both about Ed Wood and Roberta Finley in the same breath, they had to change with the times. Like things were going into, for Ed Wood, I'm sure, things were going more profitable in the porn world, so he could put food on the table. And then the reverse for Roberta Finley, which is everybody's now making porn. It's like, you know, 2-cent budgets. Nobody's making money like they used to in it. So I'll go into horror movies, right? Because they were a lot more underground, but at least they were making more money because not as many people were making them, right? Then, because everything was shot on film still. So it was expensive. You had to splice it together and do the whole thing. So it was time consuming and it was expensive, but seeing the competition was not that great because it was still very much the redheaded stepchild. Let's be honest, you know, in the late 80s. Even with the, you know, the success of Halloween and all that stuff, it still was. And you know, so I think these are the reasons, just people sort of evolving with the time, whether it be like, it seems like it's a step forward or back. It's just sort of like, however you can make this craziness work.
And even Andy Milligan and Doris Wishman were making stuff towards the end of the 80s. You know, they were kind of wrapping up their careers too. So yeah, I don't know if people understand how much stuff was going on in New York City in the 80s. It was just an amazing period.
It was amazing. I mean, I really called it, for the underground, it was really the ooze city. And these, to me, could be wrong because there's a lot of cool indie people that were working out in LA. But for me, it was all about New York, and that's what I loved. Like, I just felt like everybody was doing their ooze opus, because we had Roy Frumkis with the, you know, Trash City. And I hope I'm saying everything right here, all the titles. And we had, of course, Henenlotter with his crazy ooze opuses. We had, and there's so many. Brain Damage. I mean, I love that. That's one of my favorite movies, and he had a lot. And I remember when the posters for Frankenhooker were up on the subway. Sure. When you left the subway, remember? You would see the poster for Frankenhooker right on the subway wall. It was...
I was class of 84, by the way, just so you know.
Yeah. Yes. perfect. And so, and Greg Lamberson, he made Slime City. And that was, we just did the sequel, I don't know what year was it. It was like 2010 or something.
Yeah.
And then Lloyd with the Toxic Avenger and his kind of toxic waste ooze movie.
And he blew it all up.
Yeah. So there's just so much ooze going on in New York City. It was crazy.
That's a great title, though, for a film. If somebody was going to do a retrospective of underground film in the 80s and call it Ooze City, I love that.
Yeah. And it says it all, doesn't it? Because they all do have that in common.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to say I just watched Greg Lamberson's newest movie, Widow's Point. I don't know if you've seen it yet or not. It is breathtakingly gorgeous and it is amazing. It is probably, considering, I love Slime City and I love, your Slime City Massacre. I absolutely adore it. But this movie is just, he's up there with like Todd Sheets as one of those kind of filmmakers who goes off and does something more, like he's evolving as a filmmaker and everything, and becoming bigger and everything. And I adore that. I adore watching people grow. And you've grown as an actress and as a filmmaker yourself. And we just adore you, Debbie, and everything you do.
We could do this for like another 10 hours.
I
know. And I feel bad even saying, but there's these things I want to mention that are coming up. But at the same time, it's like, if people want to know, I guess they just go to the website, because this is not a commercial. See, talking about this stuff is like, this is the real important stuff to me. And I just appreciate being able to talk about it. I didn't come on to like promote anything per se.
Yeah, go ahead. Promote. Tell us what you've been up to.
Well, in case you guys don't already know, we have Tempe Video putting out a Chris Seaver box set on Blu-ray.
Nice.
Movies. And he's doing a special double feature separate disc of Mulva 1 and Mulva 2.
Nice. We didn't even get a chance to talk much about Chris, but go ahead.
Yeah, so he's so amazing. I just did like a 2-hour interview with him for one of the many extras that we're going to be doing. And there's all kinds of surprises yet to be seen with these releases. American Nightmare is having a 20th anniversary release with Ronan. No date yet, but that's in the works. I have my narrative, not interviewing, so it's not in competition with you guys. My narrative podcast, Obscurities, I would love people to listen to. I really would.
Oh yeah.
A lot of work gets put into it, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. Writing my book and doing a movie with Greg. He's now raising money. So there's only about 2 weeks left. I don't know when somebody's going to be listening to this, but we'll call it the end of March 2021, beginning of April. The Indiegogo will be over, and Guns of Eden, it's called. So that's super cool. Doing some radio plays. One is I Married a Fly, which is like a call back to the great old classic. Really looking forward to that. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff. I wanted to hit those, I think, because Greg's on the final leg of his raising money, and I wanted to point that out. And then also their podcast of people like narrative, interesting, weird mystery stories of obscurities in this world, everything from missing planes to, chupacabra and stuff like that. They could check out the podcast. And basically, if you go to debbierochon.com, it's all there. It's all there.
Okay, well, we'll make sure to put this out as soon as possible so that we can help you promote it.
And I'm
everything.
sure we could put your link down there as well so that folks can go there and check it out. And boy, I hope we can get you back, because there's just so many other questions I'd love to ask you about so many different things,
I thank you guys so much for your patience of getting me on, and I'm really glad to clear up all of the mysterious stories around Carl J. Sukanik.
There are many.
It's yeah, we got to clear that shit up.
We just want to make sure, there's no competition in any podcast at all. We adore podcasts as well. We listen to many of them. We don't ever view any of these. We probably get the same guests as a lot of other people, and
Right.
we love it. I say spread it, and other podcasts people ask me how to get in touch with people too, and I always do because I say spread it. It's not about us. It's about you guys. It's about getting your stuff out there.
And as far as Carl concerned, I mean, you're like the only human I know of that I could even ask a question about this, because for years, you know how it was, you couldn't even find his work. The only way you saw it was on a fanzine or the through mail order, or if you were lucky, you went to a horror convention and some guy had a bootleg VHS copy for $185. And that was like the only way you could get a hold of some of this stuff until I guess he finally put out Alien Beasts on YouTube. So you can go there and see that. But,
experience it firsthand. But, he does have some champions. I mean, there are a couple guys who work at Forbidden Planet, which if you live in New York, you definitely need to be going there if you're not over.
You gotta
there's
go
a
there,
couple
Moody.
of people that work there that champion Mr. Sukanik. So he's definitely got his supporters.
Okay,
And
good.
I am one of them. But I also must clear up, any memories that he may have mixed up, we'll say, along the way. We'll put it that way. But no, his mother never walked to my house. That's greatness. I went down to the laundry room. That's what really happened.
Well, there you go. There you go. We got the real true
And that's
thing.
great because, other than talking to him myself, I don't see how else I would have gotten this information cleared up.
If we can get Carl on our show, Debbie, if you can help us get Carl on the show, we would love to interview him.
He's and part of a community art group. I know he's got a bunch of his paintings that are there and up for sale. Yeah.
Oh my God, I would love a Carl J. Sukanik painting.
Me too.
I'll send you the link.
I had it forever, but it doesn't mean that I don't want it. But I do know someone, and I'm dead serious. If you guys want this, I do know someone that is in touch with Carl J. Sukanik, who works at Forbidden Planet.
Yes.
Oh, that is awesome.
So if you're dead serious,
We are dead serious. He's on our list.
But you know what? You have to let him speak his truth, even if it conflicts with mine, because I promise you it will. His and his mind, it just goes everywhere.
Clearly, he is a very unique individual, and you just have to allow him to talk.
Just let him be. Just hit record and let him be. But don't be like him. You guys have to actually hit record. Right?
Oh, darn, I wasn't
Absolutely.
recording here.
Yeah.
That would be terrible.
I'm so glad we could talk about him. Okay. I feel good. Nobody asked me about Carl J. Sukanik. And I am thrilled
There you go.
about him.
Well, this was great. This is just as wonderful as I had anticipated. Thank you very, very much, Debbie Rochon. You can't imagine how pleased you've made me for tonight. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Even with the technical difficulties we had earlier, this totally made up for it. This was amazing, and I'm so glad we didn't have to do it again or something, because just who knows what could happen. And we're just happy to have you and chat with you and promote you. So thank you so much.
And please let us do it again sometime.
Yes, absolutely. And there won't be any false starts. It will just be boom, boom, we're in. Thank you guys so much for having me on. Really
It's our pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed this show, and join us next month for a whole new Indie Film Cafe Spotlight. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.